If you think a farmer's pond is just a puddle you can ignore, wait till a yoga mom in a fleece vest with a clipboard calls it a community lake and suddenly everyone's packing coolers and kayaks like it's public property. That's when things went sideways, and I'm still here to tell you about it with all the bruises and paperwork to prove it. I've lived on this patch of Texas soil my whole life. 180 stubborn acres, sun-baked and honest, a couple of barns that creak in the right way, and a spring-fed pond my great-granddad dug with a mule and a sweat-stained hat. Back in 1928, I'm not sentimental, but I don't cotton to folks who see my land as an amenity to be branded and shared. So picture a Thursday morning, the windmill stuck again, me cussing at it like it owed me money, and this woman bobbed blonde hair, sunglasses huge enough to hide a satellite, marching up my gravel easement like she owns the country tablet, hugged to her chest like a Bible boots caked in my red clay, and the kind of smile that smells like meeting minutes, not mercy. She says, "Good morning, are you the property caretaker?" And I wipe my hands on my jeans and tell her straight, "No, ma'am, I'm the owner. Name's Sam." She didn't blink. She tells me she's Karen Childers, president of the Silver Timber Ranch Homeowners Association, a conservation-style community. She says all airy and sincere, and that they'd like to integrate natural features into their walking trail. And wouldn't I consider removing my perimeter fence and letting residents have occasional access to the pond, kayaking, bird watching, maybe light swimming weekends, only as if it's that small a thing to toss a fence and hand out guest passes? I said no, plain and simple. She smiles like I'm doing the unreasonable thing, and then she hands me a letter, heavy paper logo embossed, the kind of stationery you buy when you want to sound like you own a legacy, telling me my fence disrupts the visual corridor and that the pond may be considered an ecological landmark subject to community oversight, which translated from HOA speak meant we want your water, we want your view, and we want to make it look like a public good. I laugh it off, but I don't throw it away. I file it next to 100 other pieces of paper that prove where our property lines end and their imaginings begin: deeds, water rights certificates, a federal land patent from the Bureau of Land Management, a USD, a grant, the kind of paper that makes a judge go, I send copies to my attorney, Sarah Jenkins, who's the sort of lawyer that puts subpoenas in people's cereal boxes if necessary. She calls me back in 10 minutes and says, "Sam, this is nonsense. Let me draft a cease and desist." I grin because they poked the wrong bear. A week later, 3 people in tan vests with little HOA patches are walking inside my southern fence line, clipboards out, recording the ecological corridor, one of them filming with his phone like they were making a documentary about how to trespass politely. I stroll over, shotgun across my arm for posture, not loaded, just persuasive, and I tell them they're on my land. The clipboard guy says their map shows a semi-public trail. The woman claims wildlife concerns, like they'd come to save the birds and not to have a picnic at my expense. I point to my no trespassing sign, tell them it's been there since before they'd even decided which county to move into, and they scuttle off muttering. But then a longer, nastier letter arrives, this one citing obscure municipal codes, vague runoff rights, and a blurry map that blends their trail into my property like spilled ink. And that's when I stop laughing. I open the metal cabinet in my back room, pull out the original deeds, water rights, every stamped page I can find, and I set them on the dining table like armor. I mail a certified response to the HOA, clear, factual, stacked with citations, and end with a line that meant business. Any further unauthorized contact would be treated as harassment and referred to the sheriff. I figure that will be it. I figure wrong. At 7:15 on a Tuesday, there's a knock that sounds like someone trying a battering ram disguised as courtesy. 2 deputies on my porch cruiser, half-cocked across the driveway, badges glinting. They tell me someone filed a complaint that the HOA says the pond is now a community resource and that I've been occupying land in need of review. I hand over my folder. Deed from 1942, BLM patent from 68 state-verified water use rights, a laminated topo map with every parcel cut clean and bold, and the deputies make phone calls that sound like bad opera. 15 minutes later, they tell me there's no legal standing to their claim. They'll note my clear title in a report, and for my own peace of mind, maybe post more signage. I wave them off, but I watch them drive away, and then I look up and Karen in her white SUV is parked at the trailhead, sunglasses on, watching like a hawk who's missed a meal. She didn't take the word no well. The HOA group on Facebook posts a screenshot. Local enforcement unwilling to act. Mr. Ratliff chooses confrontation. Karen types. The pond belongs to all of us. 10 days later, there are tire tracks, flattened grass by the bank, an orange kayak abandoned like an offering, a crushed beer box. Little footprints and two teenagers in life vests paddling around my pond like children in a brochure for municipal bliss. I don't storm the water. I check my trail cams. The midnight footage shows a group slipping in with headlamps, coolers, no hesitation. By 9 a.m., there are 7 cars lining the easement blankets, spread a Bluetooth speaker playing country pop, a man unloading a canoe, a woman doing Tai Chi like she's warming up for a parade. I call the sheriff again. They're sympathetic but legal. Gray areas are gray for a reason until somebody breaks something or refuses to leave. It's civil territory and courts move slow. So I begin to prepare for war. The boring kind, legal paperwork evidence dumps calls to people who can yank the leash on this nonsense. I call Marcy Ruiz at the Bureau of Land Management, someone I used to work with when I did water engineering contracts, and she says, "Send me everything." I overnight a thumb drive with federal land grant copies, my correspondence with the HOA, camera footage of trespass and erosion, photos of garbage, proof of a trampled softshell turtle nest near the inlet. Now comes the twist. The part where the story stops being neighborly squabble and becomes a felony plot, because when federal agents come, they don't come for a polite chat, and they don't like forgery. The U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service shows up. They take soil samples. They photograph disturbed nesting sites. They call it a habitat corridor. And while they're doing that, someone in their office runs the HOA's charter submission to the county and finds it's got a forged map. The HOA had submitted a document that slipped their claim onto my property by nearly 200 feet, falsified boundaries signed by board members. That's not a paperwork mistake, that's a crime. Agents show up with clipboards and calm faces, and when they tell Karen she's under federal scrutiny, she goes from confident to incandescent in about 3 seconds. Megaphone clenched in her hand, her coral blouse bright like a warning flag. She shouts, "This is community rights. We won't be bullied." And the agents calmly hand her citations, take down names, photograph tent stakes, issue dispersal orders, and read statutes about endangered species, federal water protections, agricultural infrastructure rules. The tent encampment labeled Sacred Waters Community Reflection Zone comes down faster than it went up, and people leave with the air of folks who just realized a picnic had a real bill attached. Court was efficient, not cinematic, but justice can be a quiet machine that grinds the right way. Sometimes evidence from federal agencies, hand-delivered notices, the forged map, witness statements, the camera footage of the teens and the drone footage of the picnic party and the judge. A woman who looked like she'd seen too many HOA melodramas to be amused cut Karen off mid-rant and said, "Dry as a bone. The Department of the Interior and 2 federal agencies disagree with you. Sit down." Verdict: my land confirmed HOA guilty of negligence and fraud as an entity. Karen personally liable for document falsification and a raft of environmental violations. Restitution ordered. HOA dissolved. The paperwork came down like a hammer. Was I satisfied, God? Yes, but not the cartoonish kind of satisfaction where you dance on someone's ruin. It was the quiet, settling kind, like when you strap down a gate and the lock clicks into place after a long night. The restitution fixed the shoreline, paid for restoration around the turtle nest, bought solar irrigation for my fields, and paid for new fencing that actually kept people out. Karen got criminal charges, the system did its slow mechanical thing, and a lot of the folks who'd come for a free lake packed up and moved on their colonial-sounding street signs, coming down like props after a play. There's a lesson in all this, and I don't say it like a preacher. I say it like a man who spent weeks up late with legal briefs and late-night bourbon power can be dressed up in flowery language and calls for community, and it can smell like virtue. But often what's under the smell is something simpler and uglier, greed or convenience or the kind of entitlement that thinks rules are suggestions that apply to other people. The deeper thing I learned was quieter. Sometimes the kindest, strongest thing you can do for a place is defend it properly with proof, patience, and the right phone numbers in your pocket. Let the law be the muscle, not your fist, because law can either protect the little guy or be twisted to pick his pocket. Now, when I sit on my porch, coffee in hand or bourbon at twilight, I watch the water run slow and pure, hear the frogs sing, and see the trees reflected, without people in floaties interrupting the scene. Above the turtle nest is a big red sign, private property, Federal protected habitat, no trespassing. It's as satisfying as a gate that finally refuses to be toyed with. But before you go, think on this and tell me what you do when a community claims a historical right to someone else's land. Is it a noble fight for shared resources? Or is it entitlement masked as virtue? And when the law sides with the property owner, is that always justice or just the letter of the law? Drop a comment. Tell me if you've tangled with an HOA, or if you think I should have handled things differently, and share a story if you got one, because I want to hear whether you stand with communal claims or private rights. And yeah, if you've got a Karen story, I'll read it.
Cảm ơn các bạn đã xem video.